In 2013, the federal government updated regulations in terms of veteran employment. The Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act of 1974 was updated in September of 2013, and in 2015 was fully in place. As with any change in regulation or legislation, there's a lot of confusion as companies try to accurately comply with the regulations that they've been presented by the Department of Labor and the Office of Federal Contractor Compliance Programs, or OFCCP. An example of the complexity in the new ruling is how a veteran is defined. In the context of employment, not all veterans are considered to be the same. For example, those who have joined the National Guard and Reserves and have not been activated for federal service are not considered to be protected veterans in terms of the regulations. It's not just the definition of a veteran that's complicated. There are additional requirements which are included in a company's affirmative action plan, which require reporting to the federal government on an annual basis. Some of these changes include amending a company's equal opportunity statement, the information that's included on a position description that's released for employment, and the agencies that an employer must use for outreach to be able to reach out to veteran communities for employment purposes. At the end of the conflict in Vietnam, Congress passed a law known as the Vietnam-era Veterans Readjustment Assistance Act of 1974. What that did was establish criteria for veterans to be recognized as a classification for employment purposes. Those regulations were updated in September of 2013 to recognize the service of the young men and women who have served overseas in the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and in other places across the globe. These regulations require the Department of Labor to establish criteria for companies, specifically government contractors, to ensure that a certain portion of a company's roster contains veterans. It's not as simple as you would think. Not all veterans are considered equal when it comes to terms of federal employment. And that's the purpose of our corporate government compliance course. As I said, not all veterans are considered to be the same in terms of employment. These regulations, which were passed in 2013 and are now fully in effect in 2015, require government contractors, those companies which have contracts of more than $100,000 or more than 50 employees, to keep track of the number of veterans that they have on their rolls. The objective is for 8% of a company's workforce to be what are known as protected veterans. Protected veterans are those veterans who fall into one of four classifications. The first are those veterans who have served on active duty after September 11, 2001. A second category are those veterans who are disabled, who have received a disability rating for their service that's with a service-connected disability. Yet another classification are those veterans who are within 3 years of ending their contract or leaving the armed forces. And another category are those veterans who have actively served overseas in campaigns or wartime. Now, the last time that the United States was considered to be at war was the Second World War, and the actual ending period for that was in 1952. In terms of employment, all of those veterans who have served in places like Iraq or Afghanistan or in Kosovo or performed operations anywhere that our nation may have called for them to go, they qualify as protected veterans because of their service for our nation. In terms of employment, some veterans, for example those who have served in the National Guard and Reserve, are not considered protected because they don't fall into one of the four classifications that I just discussed. Because of these complexities, it is becoming more and more difficult for a company to be able to record the number of veterans that they have on their staff to ensure that they're the appropriate classification of veterans, to make sure that the ramifications of these regulations are placed in an affirmative action plan, and that the appropriate reporting procedures are followed to ensure that a company is in compliance with the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs guidance. The definition of a veteran and many other topics associated with the affirmative action plan are those items that we cover in our corporate governance compliance course.